Hello, National University Virtual High School students working on your AP US History B course. I'll be going over Unit 7, Assignment 3. This is Part 2 of the assignment, questions 8 through 14. What was Checkpoint Charlie? Why was this both a real and symbolic location in understanding the Cold War, or what the Cold War meant for Americans and Russians? So Checkpoint Charlie was a place along the Berlin Wall, and your book says on page 862, for a brief time, Russians and American tanks maneuvered within sight of each other at Checkpoint Charlie, where the American and Soviet zones met. But by fall, the tensions gradually eased. Well, Checkpoint Charlie was also not only this real place where tanks could see one another, where the troops could face off and see one another, much like the DMZ in South and North Korea, although this was much closer quarters. This situation was more symbolic in that as the Cold War was going on, it was a split between the two economic zones. So it was a place where a free market began in West Germany, and the free market ended in East Germany, and it became symbolic of this divide between the two economic systems, between communism and free market economies in the West. So this separation was very symbolic, because as people tried to flee into West Berlin, they were going there for these opportunities, and it was a symbol of getting out of the lack of opportunities in the East. So it fueled the Cold War ideologies very much so, having this divide there. Number 9, in Khrushchev's War Liberation speech, what nation did the Soviet Union direct its message to? For the most part, they were mostly talking to China. There was this Sino-Soviet split that is discussed on page 862 at the bottom. And so, but what happens there is, while Khrushchev is really talking about competing with another communist nation, namely China, about taking over territories and basically being kind of communist imperialists, if those things can even work together, but basically competing over the areas for communist liberation, he was letting China know that Khrushchev was letting China know that he was going to fight China's advances. Well, Kennedy took this as Khrushchev's threats against the United States, and this of course worked well in the Cold War narrative of the domino theory in Vietnam. This is going to move our troops into places where we're going to be, in some cases, provoking things along the Vietnam borders there, as China is looking to take over these interests in these regions. So how did the United States become increasingly involved in Vietnam? Well, you know that Ngo Diem was supposed to hold free and fair elections in Vietnam in 1956, according to the Geneva Accords, and Diem sought to establish a separate government in the South with large-scale American economic and military assistance. But at the time Kennedy entered the White House, however, the communist government in North Vietnam, led by Ho Chi Minh, of course, was directing the efforts of Viet Cong rebels in the South. This was called, and there's a great book by George Herring called America's Longest War, where he mentions that the National Liberation Front, the NLF, was starting to take people who were disaffected by Diem and convert them into South Vietnamese communists. So that's how the United States started to get involved. Diem was a failed leader, and the United States had to do something about him because he was our guy for a short time. That pulled us into the region more. Although Kennedy is said to have an intention of pulling out after 1964, what event makes it difficult? Well, the ouster of Diem and his murder, and the United States was complicit in that, so we had to put in advisors at that point, or at least it was thought we had to. Comparing contrast Kennedy's campaign charge against Eisenhower administration with what Eisenhower administration was actually doing. Well, the Eisenhower administration was training operatives to go into Cuba and take out Castro. So Kennedy's accusations were false, and this of course is going to lead to the Bay of Pigs, which I'll let you read up on page 863, and I'll stop here. Thank you for following in. Please add your comments below.